On a chilly October afternoon, I was evicted from the residence as the rain lashed down as if the sky itself intended to tear me apart. The pregnancy test stick continued to waver in my hand. However, my mother's eyes were more affected by the 2 crimson lines than mine. I was the criminal awaiting judgment, and the kitchen, where I used to consume breakfast every morning, abruptly transformed into a courtroom. Your existence is about to be irreparably damaged. My mother's voice was as keen as a knife, piercing through every defense I attempted to construct. I had anticipated ranting and perhaps being blamed, however, I had never anticipated being disconnected. Forever. I am a senior in the pharmacy program at a university in Texas, and my name is Ivy. I am 23 years old. Throughout my adolescent years, I was the epitome of a model child. I have never failed to disappoint my parents, and I am intelligent and obedient. But it all came crashing down in less than 3 minutes, from the moment I opened my purse, extracted the test, and stammered, to the moment I am expecting a child. My mother experienced a state of paralysis. Her eyes, which were previously filled with pride when she extolled about my academic accomplishments to the neighbors, now regarded me as a blemish on a flawless white sheet. Who is this individual? Who is the individual in question? She roared, each word piercing the air like projectiles. I lowered my head, anticipating that she would inquire, but I was unprepared for the severity of the subsequent inquiry. Or are you unaware of the father's identity? I was unable to conceal the agony as I lifted my head. Please refrain from uttering that statement. I am aware of his identity, however, he will not be present. He departed. My father abruptly slammed his hand on the table, causing the coffee to spill over the rim, despite remaining mute throughout the entire episode. You intend to become a single mother, despite the fact that you have not yet completed your education. Do you believe that this is a game? I instinctively maintained my belly's flattened position beneath the thin sweater. I was unsure of the source of my courage, but my voice remained unshaken. I am not relinquishing the baby, I am keeping it. I was so frightened by the calm that ensued that I believed I had destroyed all hope. My mother responded with a harsh tone, that is not going to occur. If you are determined to maintain this error, you must vacate the premises. I am not the parent of a daughter who disregards her future in such a manner. You are compelling me to relinquish custody of my own offspring. My voice cracked as I retreated. False. My father rose from his seat, his eyes brimming with rage. You made the decision. You are prioritizing that individual over this family. I was paralyzed. My parents, the same individuals who remained up all night to care for me when I was ill, who held my hand through every math problem, and who once said, no matter what happens, you'll always have us. They are currently standing in front of me, ejecting me from the residence in which I was raised. As I ascended the stairs, I gathered a few clothes, threw them into my backpack, and retrieved my nearly dead phone and worn-out student ID. There were no emotions, no final embrace, just a harsh silence. When I ventured outdoors, it continued to rain. I turned to inspect the door for the final time. No one was present, nor was anyone inclined to do so. The night bus arrived punctually. I boarded the vehicle, sat in a corner, and placed my hand on my midriff. There was no discernible path for the forthcoming voyage. However, I was no longer traveling alone. I am uncertain as to the duration of the time I spent sobbing on that bus as it traversed the chilly, damp streets of Dallas. I recall that my hands were numb from gripping the knapsack too tightly, my eyes were swollen, and the area beneath my sweater began to ache in a peculiar, unfamiliar manner by the time I disembarked. I had no place to go and no one to contact. With the exception of one individual. April, do you recall me? My voice was raspy, resembling abrasive, as I spoke into the phone. I have no place to stay tonight. I am currently expectant. April's decrepit minivan arrived at the curb less than 15 minutes later, its headlamps piercing the pitch-black night like a beacon of optimism. She abruptly exited the vehicle and enveloped me in an embrace that caused me to sob. Ivy, you are trembling like a leaf, please enter. April was my undergraduate roommate in college, However, she withdrew from the program in the middle of the semester due to an unforeseen pregnancy. In addition, her family ended their communication with her. Currently, she resided in a low-income apartment complex on the southern side of the city, where she worked night shifts as a cashier at a nearby convenience store. She was also responsible for her 2-year-old daughter, Ellie. I slept on the dilapidated sofa in their confined 2-bedroom apartment that evening. Before falling asleep in her mother's arms, Ellie murmured, "Auntie Ivy." Additionally, I felt as though I could breathe for the first time in a long time, following a series of nightmares. The subsequent weeks were brutal in every sense of the word. I submitted an application to transfer my classes online in order to balance my academic responsibilities with my professional obligations. I was recruited for the morning shift at Maple Brew, a small cafe located near the gas station, at 5 a.m. until 10 a.m., which is just enough time to return home, study, and supervise Ellie while April was at work. In order to maintain my mental equilibrium, I engaged in academic pursuits, composed essays, and conversed with my unborn child at night. How much does tuition cost? I further accumulated debt by obtaining additional federal loans. Food. For individuals were allocated 3 packages of instant noodles. I had acquired the ability to brew coffee with tepid tap water and consume dry sandwiches without sauce by the 4th month. As I began to develop a belly, the cafe patrons became increasingly unkind. Some individuals referred to me as negligent, while others made sarcastic inquiries. Therefore, where is the father? I absorbed each expression of derision as if it were an ice cube. Cold, unyielding, and piercing the core. I continued to acquire ultrasound photographs. I continued to send my parents brief emails. I am in good health, my infant is exhibiting typical development. My mother, please inform my father that I am missing him. I never received a response. After more than 26 hours of labor, I delivered my child in a public hospital in March. April remained by my side throughout the night, her hand firmly grasping mine as if she were apprehensive that I would vanish if she released it. My heart felt as though it were being tightly constricted when the initial lament was heard. I gazed at the diminutive, red, and wrinkled infant that was placed on my chest. And the weeping would not cease. I named him Jace. Jace possessed soft, dark curls and intense brown eyes, similar to my own. He clutched me as if he were aware that the entire world had abandoned us. I would depart Jace with April each morning and immediately commence my work. I studied with him every night, as he slept peacefully in the crib adjacent to my workstation. His consistent, gentle respiration served as a reminder. I was unable to abandon my pursuit. I continued to transmit photographs. Jace's initial expression, his developmental milestone of rolling over, and his first birthday. His irises were illuminated like headlights, despite the fact that he had only consumed 3 cupcakes. Not one unanswered call, not one reply. I was so enthralled with laughter that I burst into tears when Jace took his first steps and reached out to retrieve a plastic utensil found on the floor. I recorded it and transmitted it. My infant is now capable of walking, as indicated by the email's subject line. A few days later, I received notification that my father had suffered a moderate heart attack. My telephone was answered by a busy signal. I was contacted once more, but it was unremarkable. April stood in the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, and gazing at me as if she were already aware. They have made their decision. Ivy, it is impossible to rescue individuals from their own predicaments. I lowered my head. Certain incisions do not bleed, however, they continue to fester, much like infections. I held Jace as we slept on the narrow cot by the window that evening. Dallas was enveloped in a gentle fog, causing the streetlights to appear as delicate golden dots. Jace's head was tucked into my neck as he stirred. I murmured. There are only the 2 of us, my child. However, this is sufficient. I intended to purge the wardrobe that afternoon in order to locate a few summer garments for Jace. May had arrived in Dallas, and the cramped apartment was unbearably sweltering. The ceiling fan was unable to contend with the intense heat. I retrieved an antiquated denim garment that had been unused for the entirety of the winter. My fingertips came into contact with a crumpled piece of paper as I flipped the pocket before placing it in the donation bag. A ticket for the lottery. In December, following an exhausting shift, I acquired it from the convenience store located near Maple Brew. I had purchased it on impulse due to the glowing sign that indicated a windfall of $47 million, and I promptly forgot about it. I was about to discard it when I laughed and shook my head. However, I then observed Jace's irises. He was engaged in the act of playing with blocks on the floor, and his large, round eyes were fixed on me. I was paralyzed. What is the danger in verifying, correct? I retrieved my phone and entered the numerals that were partially faded. The website loaded at a sluggish pace. I experienced a momentary heartbeat. The figures. Identical. Each and every one. 1, 2, 5, 7, 9, 45, 60. I had to read it at least 3 times, as it felt as though something was squeezing my sternum and preventing me from breathing. Curious, Jace crawled over and placed his hand on my knee. "Oh, my mother, are you in pain?" I was unable to respond. I was only able to murmur. "Jace, please contact Miss April immediately, my dear. Inform her to come to this location." April entered the apartment minutes later, still wearing her night shift uniform, her eyes open with panic. What transpired? Was an individual injured? I handed her my phone. "April, I believe I have won the lottery." Very unpleasant. She gazed at the screen. Then, at me. Then, I looked at the crumpled ticket in my hand. "Ivy, these numbers are the windfall." I nodded. 47 million, prior to taxes. I was enveloped in an embrace by April. In the sweltering living room, we both wept like infants as children's toys crunched beneath our feet. I was trembling. Not out of dread. However, due to my inability to comprehend the events that were transpiring. We arrived at the Texas Lottery office an hour later. The ticket was authenticated. The paperwork commenced. I received nearly $22 million after taxes, which was sufficient to transform the lives of my son and me. That evening, after Jace fell asleep on the mattress that I intended to replace with a true bed the following day, I sat across from April in the kitchen, illuminated by the soft yellow glow. She grasped my palm. "Ivy. You have survived. Additionally, you are now permitted to exist." Still in a state of incredulity, I nodded. "However, I am unable to squander this opportunity. I require assistance. A financial advisor." A business card that was worn was extracted from April's pocketbook. "Alec. My cousin. He is employed as a financial advisor for youthful entrepreneurs in Austin. Gentle and discreet. You will require an individual of his caliber." 2 days later, I met with Alec for the first time in a petite, tranquil office located within a contemporary office complex. He appeared to be in his 30s. Calm, courteous, and exceedingly professional, it actually simplified my breathing. Alec listened attentively as I recounted the entirety of my story, including the infant, my parents, and the crumpled lottery ticket. He did not interrupt once, only nodding. Afterward, he stated, "The initial step is to remain discreet. Do not disclose any information to anyone other than April and me." I nodded. I have no confidence in anyone else. "All right. Secondly, I will assist you in the development of a long-term financial plan, as well as effective investments and legal protection. However, I require that you execute an agreement that guarantees the confidentiality of all information for the subsequent 3 months. Is it possible for you to accomplish that?" "Indeed, as long as Jace remains secure." With a steady gaze, Alec presented me with a glass of water. "Ivy, you are unaware that money has the power to transform everyone and everything. You have just opened a door, but the space behind it is not solely illuminated. Jace's tiny hands were firmly wrapped around a worn stuffed bear as he slept, and I stood by the crib that evening. A quiet tempest was brewing within me. I was aware that the world was on the brink of a transformation, and I was also aware. Some of the individuals who had previously tossed me into a pit would attempt to crawl back, while holding wine glasses and feigning a smile. I was no longer the girl who accidentally became pregnant. I was Ivy, the single mother who possessed $22 million in her bank account. 3 days later, the newspapers reported my victory. Alec had attempted to postpone the media, but he was unable to prevent a convenience store cashier from recognizing my visage and selling the story to a news site. The headline announced that a young single mother from Dallas had won a $47 million lottery. Next to Jace, I was depicted in the photograph, standing outside the lottery facility. I am experiencing a combination of panic and exhaustion on my visage. Thousands of comments were located beneath it. Some were encouraging, while others were congratulatory. However, the majority were the type that suggested that I had likely recently given birth to a child for the media, the public, or even strangers who were pounding on my door seeking assistance. However, I was not adequately prepared for my mother's telephone call. Her name appeared on my screen in a manner reminiscent of a dagger from the past. 7 years. Not a single text. Not a single check-in. Additionally, she has initiated communication. Alec was the subject of my gaze. Should I respond? Would you like to confront it? I nodded. Subsequently, respond, however, refrain from allowing them to reverse the script and victimize themselves. I extracted it. 4. My mother's voice was trembling as if she had just completed a marathon. It is I, my mother. I recently observed you on the news. Nothing was said by me. She continued to speak, as if she was apprehensive that I would terminate the call if she ceased. You have matured considerably, and the young lad bears an uncanny resemblance to you during your childhood. I responded, his name is Jace, my voice becoming quiescent. Jace, she repeated, her tongue licking the syllables. What a lovely name. Who is your father? He also witnessed the news. We both. We are missing you. An immense amount. I apologize. I am aware that we were in error. Is it possible for us to restart? My laughter was acrid. 7 years. There was not a solitary birthday card. I was never questioned as to whether I was alive or deceased. Do you truly believe that a single telephone communication is sufficient? The other end was devoid of sound. Afterward. Is it possible for us to convene and dine as a family? I hesitated. Alex slightly shook his head. Nevertheless, I blinked. No problem. Friday night. 7 p.m. Braddock's Grill. Is that the location you would select? Indeed, you recall. Not as a result of memories. You have a preference for expensive locations. Before she could respond, I terminated the call. Not due to emotion, but rather to a cold clarity that was gradually extracting me from all of the old wounds. My pulse was racing. Friday night. I arrived 10 minutes after the scheduled time. Intentionally. Braddock's remained unchanged. Waiters in tuxedos, sparkling wine glasses, and immaculate white tablecloths that resembled those on a movie set. I donned a turtleneck sweater and dark trousers. Absolutely no cosmetics. Absence of jewelry. Armor is not present. Silence, as keen as a blade. My folks were already seated. 2 glasses of red wine and 1 glass of water had been placed on the table. Ivy, my dear. My mother rose from her seat and extended her hand. Walking over, I retrieved a chair and sat down without contacting her. Where is the boy? My father inquired. His voice was more profound than I had previously recalled. At home, with an individual who is truly considered a member of the family. She slightly twitched her eyes as she pressed her lips together. My father intertwined his fingers and uttered the following words. We have contemplated this matter extensively. Regarding what transpired. Regarding the errors. On both sides. Was there an error on my part? I gazed directly at him. By retaining my child. By declining to sacrifice his life in order to secure the unwavering support of my parents. No one responded. A man in a tuxedo emerges from behind them and occupies the table without invitation. Miss Ivy, I hope you are having a pleasant evening. I am Todd Ivy, the legal representative for Mr. and Mrs. Adams. They have developed a comprehensive strategy to re-establish the familial bond. I was amused. Did you bring a counsel to a family reunion? How heartfelt. My mother reddened. It is. To clarify, we can establish a trust fund for Jace. Additionally, participate in the investment. Todd occupied my attention. Did they inform you that they evicted me from my home when I was 6 months pregnant? No financial resources, no residence, and not even a shred of luck. I stood up as Todd froze. I am grateful for the supper. However, I did not arrive at this location with the intention of signing contracts. I arrived to gain a clear perspective. Your affection remains contingent upon certain conditions. Additionally, I am not inclined to accept it. My mother called after me as I turned to depart. I would like to request Ivy. Please refrain from being so unkind. Upon returning, my eyes were as cold as ice. Allowing a child to develop without knowledge of the appearance of their elders is cruel. I am merely striving to be equitable. Upon my arrival home that evening, I discovered Jace serenely asleep in April's embrace. I stood there, unconsciously caressing his hair as I observed him. April inquired gently. Are you feeling well? I grinned. I am unconcerned, as I have no expectations of them this time. And that is the most liberating sensation in the universe. Noah could not refute it, therefore, he lowered his head. I proceeded. How many times did I attempt to inform you? When Olivia referred to me as a possessive shadow, when Margaret made fun of me at every family dinner, and when I was excluded from every significant event? I anticipated your response. However, what actions did you take? You advised me not to take it personally. Olivia's humor is somewhat erratic, and her mother is somewhat problematic. You prioritized their comfort over my honesty. I was unaware of the gravity of the situation. Noah almost murmured to himself. You were unaware of the information because you were unwilling to learn. I abruptly terminated our conversation. You were apprehensive that becoming aware would necessitate your support for me. And that entailed resisting your mother, your sister, and the individuals who have consistently dominated your existence. Consequently, you disregarded the situation, and I bore the brunt of the blows. I emerged from the doors into the tranquil mezzanine hallway, where 2 individuals were depicted in large mirrors in a state of disarray. Noah followed, his hands quivering as if he were attempting to grasp something that was evaporating. Zoe, I am sincerely apologetic. If only I had been informed. If I had heeded your advice sooner. What subsequent actions should be taken? I turned and gazed into his eyes. Instead of their sugar-coated poison, you would have stood up for me against your mother, said no to Olivia, and believed in me. He declined to respond. His silence was the most unambiguous response I had ever received. I used to love you so much that it blinded me, but today, I have chosen to love myself more. I love you, Noah. He attempted to grasp me, but I moved back. Refrain. Avoid utilizing your remorse as an excuse to induce me to withdraw. I am no longer the woman you can disregard. I have acquired the ability to survive without your family's approval, and, more significantly, without your presence. I turned and proceeded to ascend the stairs. The marble floor reverberated with the piercing sound of my heels. Noah, who was standing behind me, was frozen, his shadow extending long and silent, as if he was a man who could no longer deny the guilt of a past offense. I did not retrace my steps. The news of the nuptials being called off mid-ceremony quickly spread through San Diego's social circles in the days that followed. Olivia was absent from social media for nearly 2 months. She was entirely shunned by the groom's side and was excluded from her close friend group. She was unable to execute any of her social ascending strategies. The bank repossessed Margaret's luxurious condo in Bellevue. She was compelled to sell her BMW and relocate to a smaller rental apartment, thereby forsaking the affluent neighborhood she had previously referred to as the elite zone. Additionally, Noah. After the third call, I blocked his number. He contacted me twice. I had endured an excessive amount of solitude. It was time for me to coexist with the sound of my own voice. Additionally, I made my decision to refrain from listening to the words that I once pleaded to utter. 1 year afterward, I sat on the third-floor balcony, gazing out at the Pacific Ocean's infinite expanse, as waves crashed against the white boulders below. The coffee cup in my palms was tinted a golden hue as the early sunlight shimmered across the water. My lungs were flooded with a cool breeze and salty air, and I experienced a sensation of weightlessness. I never envisaged that I would reside in Santa Barbara, a city that was previously inaccessible to me on a nurse's salary. However, I now possess a modest apartment that is situated a mere few minutes' walk from the beach. The apartment features a comfortable workspace, a few lush green plants, and a life that is devoid of snide remarks, controlling hands, or judgmental eyes. I had reconstructed my existence from the ashes. I filed for divorce from Noah within 2 weeks of Olivia's ruined wedding, without any disputes or a protracted process. He lacked the fortitude to resist, and I had no remaining resources to cling to. I abandoned all possessions, with the exception of justice. I employed my own attorney and conducted my business discreetly. Margaret was compelled to return the funds she had withdrawn from Noah's account as a result of the evidence I had gathered before, as part of a private resolution to prevent criminal charges. The majority of that money served as the foundation for my new beginning. I returned to Southern California and secured employment at a community clinic. People recognized my name, valued my abilities, and did not perceive me as someone who had married above her class. There, no one inquired about the reason for my divorce, and no one was aware that I was once Olivia Evans's sister-in-law. They only knew me as Zoe, the dedicated nurse who volunteered for night duties when a child had a fever and brought donuts every Friday morning. Additionally, this sufficed. What about the Evans family? I did not make an effort to remain informed, however, news always reached me. In the same way, the truth is never truly interred. Margaret's Bellevue condominium was repossessed due to her failure to make payments. She lost several professional connections as a result of the wedding scandal. Rumors circulated that she had employed her son's name to commit financial fraud. No one desired to be associated with a notorious, self-centered mother-in-law. She eventually relocated to a rental unit in the suburbs of the Inland Empire, where she was able to escape the attention she had previously stolen from her son and the cocktail parties. Additionally, Olivia. She disappeared in isolation, having been a social media princess with nearly 40,000 followers. According to some sources, she attempted to reinvent herself as an online relationship coach, however, she was exposed for her lack of credentials. People no longer greeted her at social events, and her former communities of acquaintances turned their backs sequentially. She became a cautionary tale among the upper class. Do not be deceived by superficial appearances, recall the Evans nuptials. A link to a local blog article about a girl who nearly married a young millionaire, who is now employed as a retail clerk at a fitness studio, was sent to me by a former acquaintance. I refrained from opening it. I was not required to be informed about Olivia's living situation. And Noah? I was informed that he changed companies. That he changed his phone number, ceased using social media, and pursued a more private lifestyle. Some assert that he began consulting with a therapist. However, to me, it is merely background noise, akin to the weather forecast for a different state. I harbor no animosity toward him. However, I am no longer fond of him. I weep for the child I was. one who was so devoted to him that she sacrificed her self-respect in order to be accepted. However, I refrain from lamenting the union. I would not have acquired the ability to stand independently without it. I would not have discovered the fortitude that I had previously underestimated. I took a stroll along the shoreline after consuming my coffee that morning. The cool seawater lapped at my ankles as my bare feet gingerly sank into the sand. I exhaled deeply, allowing the wind to caress my tresses. I was previously identified as the domestic at my sister-in-law's wedding, a fact that no one in this vicinity was aware of. Neither judgment nor sympathy were directed toward me. Zoe was my name. The woman who traversed the depths of purgatory and elected not to transport the ashes. A rare, clear Saturday morning in mid-September marked the inauguration of the Breaking Cycles Foundation. Our seed funding was utilized to renovate the modest community center in West Dallas, which was previously an old warehouse. It was now adorned with banners that bore the name of the foundation and flora. Uncomplicated yet potent. The local media attended. The single mothers we had discreetly supported over the past 2 months, potential donors, several nonprofits, and 3 TV stations. I wore a white blouse and cream trousers, and I did not wear any jewelry, with the exception of a glittery purple star-shaped hair clip that Jace gifted me on my birthday. A plastic toy that is entirely unsuitable for the ensemble. However, it was my emblem. Unmistakable, sincere, and straightforward. April stood in close proximity to me, firmly grasping her speech notes. She was experiencing anxiety. Surprisingly, I experienced an overwhelming sense of tranquility. My parents were punctual, as they were always punctual for any event that involved cameras. My mother exhibited immaculate makeup and wore a Chanel dress. My father's calfskin shoes were polished to a mirror-like finish. Todd, the attorney, pursued in his usual manner, holding his large folder. The air around us was chilled by my smile, which was frigid enough to chill the air, but polite enough to avoid being called rude. I greeted them with a handshake. Please join me in celebrating the debut of the sole accomplishment of my life that I am genuinely proud of. My mother beamed with a sweet expression. Ivy, we are also extremely proud of you. I refrained from responding. A few moments later, the director of the center approached the microphone and clasped his hands. Dr. Ivy Adams, the founder of Breaking Cycles Foundation, deserves a heartfelt round of acclaim. Cameras flashed continuously as applause broke out. I ascended onto the diminutive stage. My hands did not tremble, and my pulse was not pounding. There was only one item. The truth. Additionally, it was anticipating its liberation. Taking a deep breath, I gazed directly into the throng. I was evicted from my residence 7 years ago. I was 6 months expectant. Described as a burden, a failure, and a traitor to the family's values. All of this is due to my decision to retain my child. A hush descended upon the chamber. I used to believe that I was deserving of it. However, I was mistaken. The individuals who abandoned me were the ones who were undeserving. I am not present today as a doctor or lottery winner. I am a solitary mother who is present here. In that capacity, I established the Breaking Cycles Foundation. An end to the covert violence, abandonment, and stigma that millions of single mothers experience on a daily basis. The hall was reverberated by the thunderous ovation. My father sat up erect, and I observed my mother's face tighten. It is evident that the individual is no longer at ease. I proceeded. It is in my knowledge that my parents are situated outside. The individuals who neglected to send their grandson a birthday card. Those who attended each appointment with a lawyer. Additionally, I extended an invitation to them today. Not to reconcile. However, this is to allow them to observe that I am not dependent on their success. The air became more viscous. My parents were the focus of the cameras. My mother forced a smile. Todd was murmured to by my father. I lowered the microphone and exited the stage to a thunderous round of acclaim. Immediately upon my arrival at the reception area, my father stepped in front of me, his voice subdued and tense. Ivy, what was that? Is your intention to expose your family to reproach in the media? I am being entirely candid. If it causes you to feel ashamed, it may be beneficial to contemplate the reason. Todd intervened, endeavoring to maintain an impartial demeanor. Ivy, perhaps we should have a private conversation. There are certain areas in which we should agree in order to effectively manage public reaction. Oversee. I interrupted him, maintaining my volume. Do you believe that I am a company whose shares you could potentially negotiate? My mother, Ivy, raised her voice to a frequency that was unusual for her. You are in the process of dismantling everything. You are displacing your parents. No, you were never at the center. I am merely demonstrating to the world what you did initially. Refuse to acknowledge. My father's complexion became flushed. You will regret this, you ungrateful child. I communicated with the security personnel. Please ensure that they are escorted from the premises. If they refuse to cooperate, contact the authorities. My mother protested, her eyes welling with weeping, as the guards entered. How callous to perform this in the presence of all. False. When your daughter required your assistance the most, you were heartless in abandoning her. What I am currently engaged in is appropriate. The exit was accompanied by escorts, and cameras documented the event. I did not hesitate. Because for the first time in my life, I was not embarrassed of my identity. I was filled with pride. April hastily approached me and closely embraced me. Ivy, you have just reimagined the concept of flipping the script. I grinned. I have yet to complete the task. The Breaking Cycles Foundation had provided assistance to more than 170 single mothers in Texas within 6 months of its official launch. Offering emergency accommodation, legal counseling, child care services, and educational scholarships to both mothers and their children. I was no longer a name murmured in the shadows, I was transformed into a symbol of resurrection and survival. I was the subject of NBC's Woman of the Year segment during the first week of January. I was questioned by the reporter. What prevented you from experiencing a breakdown? I responded without hesitation. An infant with eyes that are identical to my own, and a past that is so bitter that it is impossible to contemplate. The narrative achieved widespread dissemination. The Foundation's inbox was inundated with hundreds of letters from all over the country on a daily basis. Young women who are disowned by their families, mothers who are pushed to the margins of society, and even those who had previously remained mute but now wish to speak out. Unfortunately, I was unable to respond to each individual message, however, I did read each one and shed tears. I was not overcome with melancholy, rather, I finally comprehended the situation. My suffering was not inconsequential. It was becoming a refuge for others. I believed that my parents would recognize the warning and withdraw their support. However, they were akin to vegetation, if you remove them, they will re-emerge. I received a priority mail parcel in the second week following the feature's airing. The proposition for reconciliation contained terms that were so absurd that I initially believed it was a joke. They would issue a public apology if I consented to transfer the administration of the foundation to a board of trustees they had selected in order to guarantee its long-term effectiveness. I chuckled and threw the papers to the ground. April grasped it with her eyes wide open. Are they delusional? Do they believe that this is a family business? I shook my head. They believe that money is the key to re-establishing family connections. However, I have already replaced the latches. My mother left me a voicemail 2 weeks later. Her voice was resonant with emotion, as if she were the lead in a soap opera. Ivy, your father is ill. He is exceedingly disheartened. There is no way we can continue in this manner, we are still a family, regardless. I refrained from responding. I was aware. They were not in pain because they had lost me. The reason they were in pain was that they had lost control. Their names appeared on the guest list for a social investment conference at which I was the keynote speaker 3 days later. Nevertheless, they were unable to resist the allure of a chamber that was equipped with cameras and a person who bore a name. I arrived adequately equipped this time. The spotlight illuminated my visage as I entered the stage. I observed my mother in the third row, who was dressed in a pastel silk dress and had a vacant expression. My father sat with his arms crossed and his eyes averted. I am not standing here today because I am exceptional, I began. Rather, I am here because I was pushed to the bottom and, rather than drowning, I chose to ascend. I elected to transform abandonment into fortitude. I elected to revise the narrative that others attempted to compose for me. Waves of acclaim crashed. I raised my head and gazed directly at them. I opt for autonomy, no one exercises authority over me, no one establishes boundaries, and no one represents me, save for myself. My assistant deposited a third negotiation proposal in a thick envelope on my desk when I returned to the Foundation's office that evening. The Foundation's administration will be transferred in exchange for a public apology and family reconciliation, utilizing the same old tactics. I tore it up in the presence of April. They continue to be unable to comprehend the most basic concepts. Which is it? She inquired. That I am no longer in need of them. We laughed not out of malice, but rather out of freedom. The following day, I published an entry on the Foundation's website featuring the first photograph ever taken of Jason and me at the hospital. I am still wearing a thin gown, and my hair is matted with perspiration. I have dark circles under my eyes as a result of labor. The caption stated, "My family did not select me. However, I elected to prioritize my own interests. And that is the most advantageous decision I have ever made." Jace, who is now 6 years old, is capable of writing his name, riding a bicycle, and sharing that my mother was a superhero who won the lottery and saved the world. I never correct him, as I believe that he is not in error. Who are my parents? They are likely still present, attempting to revise the narrative in a manner that enhances their reputation. However, I am no longer concerned. Simply because I have already emerged victorious. Not with money, but with the truth. Additionally, I am self-sufficient and do not require validation from others. I am Ivy. A single mother. Survivor. Constructor. Additionally, I am the sole individual who is permitted to revise this chapter. The new home is situated at the intersection of a tranquil street in West Dallas, not far from the community center. However, it is sufficiently remote that I can hear the wind rustling through the maple trees each afternoon. Roof with red tiles. A backyard that is sufficiently spacious to accommodate a swing and a small wooden climbing structure for the children. It is neither extravagant nor opulent. However, it belongs to me. The type of residence that I once believed was unattainable. 7 years ago. Jace, who is nearly 7 years old, sprinted in circles around the newly constructed kitchen, gripping his Lego box as if it were a priceless treasure. "Dear Mother, I am permitted to select any room that I desire. Subject to the condition that you personally sanitize it." I responded by situating a box of spices on the shelf. The residence comprises 4 apartments. 1 for myself, 1 for Jace, 1 for an office, and 1 for special guests. Single mothers who are currently in transition and have not yet secured stable accommodation. This is not merely a residence. It serves as a transient haven for those whom the world has forgotten. The initial residents were April and her daughter, Ellie. They aided me in the construction of a large dining table in the center of the house, the planting of flowers by the entrance, and the repainting of the walls. Maria and her son, who had previously resided in a vehicle for 3 months, followed them, interrupting the cycle. Maria is currently enrolled in evening accounting courses and maintains a steady employment. Maria said, "Ivy," as she applied yellow paint to the wall of the living room. "I never imagined that I would ever be able to call a place home again. I am grateful." I simply grinned. "I am grateful for your perseverance. Additionally, this location. It is the property of all of us." On a Saturday afternoon, the housewarming celebration was uncomplicated. No champagne, no scented candles. Pizza, homemade lemonade, a few inexpensive balloons, and an abundance of merriment. Walker, Jace's closest companion, accompanied his mother with a tray of chocolate chip cookies. Rebecca, a single mother who had endured an abusive marriage, arrived early and promptly volunteered to assist me in preparing the food. No one felt out of place, despite the fact that the house was filled of people. Each individual possessed a scar. Each individual had previously been backed into a corner. Consequently, none of us were left in isolation. I sat on the swing with Jace in my lap as the sunset painted the backyard orange. He continued to hold a half-eaten slice of pizza as he snuggled into my bosom. "Mother?" Jace inquired gently. "Is grandmother on her way?" I gazed into the vast, dark eyes and inhaled slowly. "No, my dear, they are not coming." "Why not?" "Because, at times, individuals are only interested in establishing a connection with you when they believe that you have something to offer them. However, this is not the case in actual family." Jace contemplated for a brief period before nodding. "Subsequently, I believe that we have already established a genuine family." I embraced him tightly, allowing his diminutive heartbeat to reverberate against my bosom. I did not require the world's approval, rather, I required this instant, in which I was certain that I had been correct, to refrain from breaking. I was invited to present at a national conference on the post-traditional society and modern families the following week. A portion of me perceived it as sardonic. Because it was that tradition that attempted to completely muzzle me at one time. I stood in front of hundreds of eyes, the majority of which belonged to individuals who either did not comprehend or had never encountered the situation we had encountered. However, I did not experience any anxiety. I was not raised in a traditional family, my parents did not accompany me to school, and they were not present when I gave birth. They have never inquired about the well-being of their grandson. However, I possess a community and a friend who provided me with support during a rainy night. I have other mothers who have rebuilt their lives with me from the ruins. Additionally, I have a young son. In a drowsy voice that is brimming with trust, who addresses me as Mom each morning. Therefore, I would like to address each of you today. Occasionally, the place of birth is not the place of family. It is the location where you are selected. In a place where love is not derived from heredity but rather from loyalty. Standing beside an individual when no one else does. Upon my return from the conference, I discovered an additional envelope in the mailbox. No return address is provided. A photograph of me as a young girl, seated with my mother at a picnic in Austin, was enclosed. It was inscribed on the reverse side. I was unsure of how to adore you in a manner that was appropriate. However, I trust that you will be able to develop a genuine affection for Jace. I apologize. I refrained from weeping. I have recently affixed the photograph to the bookshelf in the living room, adjacent to a photograph of Jace scaling a tree for the first time, and he is smiling from ear to ear. I did not require their return. I did not require the past to be rewritten. This was due to the fact that I now had a future that I had chosen, which was an opportunity that the past could never provide. A family that is established through choice, rather than obligation. The home was silent that evening. The timber floor was illuminated by the silvery cast of moonlight. I stood at the doorway, gazing out at the backyard, where the children had abandoned their sandals and a teddy bear that had been drenched in rain. April approached me, holding 2 mugs of steaming cocoa. "Currently, your residence is quite crowded." "Yes," I smiled, and none of them needed to request permission to remain. I exhaled deeply. Fear has been eliminated. There will be no more suffering. Only the tranquility of an individual who had endured the storm and had ultimately comprehended its implications. Love does not necessitate shared DNA. Family is not determined by one's birthplace. Family is a place where you are permitted to be as you are. I, Ivy, have located that household. On my own terms. Ivy's narrative is not solely a narrative of triumph over abandonment. It is an empowering reminder that family does not have to be located in the place of our birth. It may be the location where we are cherished. Without reservation. She transformed from a single mother who was abandoned on the streets to a symbol of optimism, inspiring hundreds of other women. Ivy demonstrated that the most rewarding experiences in life can sometimes be achieved through our own decisions, when we have the fortitude to abandon the past and construct a new future that is characterized by integrity, purpose, and compassion. What are your thoughts on Ivy's journey? Is forgiveness always warranted for biological families? Please share your views in the comments section below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for additional poignant and thought-provoking narratives about family and life.